Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Counting down to that November 3rd election day. Cannot wait. I'm at the point of true excitement. That, there might be light at the other end of the tunnel. There might be an end to our crybaby in chief, to the victim in chief. I am so tired of hearing Trump talk about, they're so mean to me. They ask me mean questions. They're holding me responsible for stuff. I'm so tired of the deflection and the inability to take responsibility for his actions. Just this self-entitled, just this whiny, just stop. We used to be a country of the buck stops here. Now we got a guy who's like, no, you take it. Oh, no, it's their fault. And what's interesting to me is I've yet to find a Trump supporter who doesn't have the victim persecution complex that he exudes. I've yet to meet one that goes, yeah, he lies, but I want the tax money. I've yet to find one that's honest and say, yeah, the guy's a whiny, complaining, self-centered narcissist who only cares about himself. But you know what? So am I. I want what I want. I would respect that. I honestly would. But, I actually had someone today go, well, the mainstream corporate media, the liberal media. I'm going, liberal media? What are you talking about, liberal media? I see a corporate media. I'm with you on that part of it, but I don't know how corporate and liberal got together. I don't see where you got that marriage, but I understand the victim complex. I get it. Anything you don't like has got to be liberal. Seriously, but I had this guy, give me the whole spiel about how horrible people have been to Donald Trump and how, they they're actually trying to hold him accountable for his actions and how the press is bad, mean to him. And I'm going, did you live through the Obama years? Where basically the right wing and the media didn't even call him a citizen. I mean, it's one of those things, didn't even call him a citizen. He was a Kenyan Muslim. Do you remember that? Or do we have that short of a memory? The historical amnesia of basically what Trump and his supporters were saying about Obama. Do you not remember that? And that it's the guy who's at the top of the mountain. Did you never play that game when you were a kid? King of the Mountain, where everybody's literally trying to throw you off? This is kind of that, where you're responsible for everything that you do. Trump boogered up the response to the virus. There's no questioning that. In fact, you've got him in his own words saying he knew, while he's telling you and me that it's not a big deal, just like the flu, it'll just disappear. We've only got 15 cases. It'll be down to 0 before you know it. We've literally got him on tape saying he knew how dangerous it was and joking that someone coughed and everyone dove under the table. And yet, you're still going to go along with, oh, you're so mean to him. Oh, you're so mean. You're so bad. It's insanity. And look, I guess I'm in this world where I don't put anyone on a pedestal. I never have. And I don't think you put politicians on a pedestal. Politicians are tools to get the things that we need done. To me, that's simple. I have no hero worship. I have no inflated expectations of their character, of their morality. I have no inflated views on that they're better than anyone else, that somehow their pants fly on without them having to put one foot in and then the next. Unless they're like Rudy Giuliani, who feels the need to lay down on the bed and then grope himself. Which, hey, nothing against Rudy. I'll be honest with you. If you're Rudy's age and there's a chance, you got to take your shot. And I know people are going to get all upset. Yeah. It was dumb of Rudy to do that. Because if a comedian got him in a compromising position, Imagine what someone who really was trying to get dirt on him has. But I digress. We are now in this moment where we're ticking down to the possible days where maybe I can once again look at a politician and go, yeah, the buck does stop there, and you're responsible for it. And maybe they'll take responsibility. I don't know. We'll find out. But I said on Inauguration Day, 2017, I said, I believe Trump is going to be the great uniter. I believe he's going to unite the country. I believe that, at the end of this, hopefully we're going to get through the misery and the horror that is to come, but we're going to be stronger on the other side. He's going to unite the country, and it was going to be against him. And the polling that we're seeing is, could be. Texas is now in the toss-up category by the Cook Report. If a year ago you would have told me Texas was in play, there's a possibility that a Democrat in Texas could carry the state, I would have said, no, that's not going to happen. It's possible. And we're in this weird moment where I think people are finally waking up to Trump's shtick. You can't replay 2016. The miracle struck. You can't replay it, even though they're trying. Look, they've got the lock him up chance now. You saw that. And also more emails talking about them damn emails again. Only this one a little sketchier. But still, trying to keep us stupid with the same, because we're familiar with it. I mean, some of us already bought the T-shirts and we got the hats and the flags and all that stuff. So, it's kind of like, it's kind of like when, you see that, when I went to go see Three Dog Night, and they didn't have the original guys. Or when I got to see the Guess Who, and it was Kevin DeBro as the lead singer, the guy from Quiet Riot. Not quite the same, but you go, hey, they're singing the songs. They're almost the same. Not quite the same. And I got to tell you, I think on Election Day, and I'm hoping beyond hope that we come out in large numbers and we throw the bum out. And look, I got to think there's a lot of Republicans who are put up, who are done with this as well. If you saw yesterday from Omaha, evidently had a big rally, 29,000 people in frigid temperatures in Omaha, Nebraska, and Trump took off, gone. He was in and out, no problems. The 29,000 people who were stuck there, because evidently couldn't get the shuttles back and forth fast enough, were there for hours in freezing temperatures. Some people ended up in the hospital. And it got me thinking, you got all these people out there who are, crammed together. It is beginning of flu season, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic, mind you. Not good for your supporters. I mean, if you really wanted those people, and the only reason he's in Nebraska is to get that one electoral vote that, because he's going to carry the state, but it's just that one electoral vote that he's going after. If you kill a bunch of them off, I think you're going to struggle. But I think Biden hit back right. He said, look, at the end of the day, you've got these older people, you got kids that they took to these things. They're stranded in sub-zero freezing temperatures for hours. He said it captures President Trump's whole approach in this crisis. And it really does. And this is, again, I know, the Trumpkins aren't going to buy it, but still, it's pretty amazing. Also, Trump was in Nevada. And he had, something fun to say. He said, basically, we don't want to count all the votes. He said that we'll see what happens at the end of the day. Hopefully it won't go longer than Election Day. Hopefully the few states remaining that want to take a lot of time after November 3rd to count ballots, that won't be allowed by various courts. You know who he's talking about, right? He's talking about Pennsylvania. And it was one of those things where, I saw that. I'm like, wow, he's talking about Pennsylvania. Because we have, our state Supreme Court said, we're going to count the ballots. If you mail it on Election Day, and I say don't, you should, if you haven't mailed it in by now, take it, hand carry it to your election office. drop it in the box or take it to the polling place, put on the hazmat suit, do what you got to do, but go to the polling place and hand your ballot in and cast your vote on election day. But here in Pennsylvania, if it's postmarked November 3rd and it's received by the 6th, it will be counted for now. The Supreme Court ruled that's the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court ruled on it. The U.S. Supreme Court deferred to the Pennsylvania court. And today, and this is one of those things where, I was happy. I was like, wow, this is great. The Supreme Court didn't screw up anything today. The U.S. Supreme Court didn't do anything crazy yet. Because they put aside the Republicans' request to expedite an appeal into the Supreme Court. So evidently for now, and this is how the story's being couched, for now, not going to undo the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court. For now. Just for now. So I was happy about that. But, again, I'm looking at this thing in Omaha, and I'm going, man, this is horrible. Super spreader event, people stuck out in the cold, and, just terrible. And so I'm looking around, and, I had a listener send me an email and said, have you seen these headlines? And she listed a whole bunch of headlines, from CBS News. Hospitals across 38 states report increase in COVID-19 patients. The Houston Chronicle, third spike, ? Officials warn Houston COVID-19 uptick could become a surge. NPR, U.S. coronavirus cases surpass summer peak and are climbing fast. The Milwaukee Journal, it's a nightmare scenario. Wisconsin reports worst day of pandemic yet. The Denver Post, Denver moves to second highest level of COVID-19 restrictions. You've got the Washington Post saying Dow slides nearly 700 points as coronavirus counts threaten fragile recovery. You see a whole bunch of them. Cases going crazy. Forbes headline, White House lists ending COVID-19 pandemic as Trump accomplishment. So the rest of the world's going, hey, you know what? Things are getting worse. Things are getting worse. Not Trump, though. Everything's fine. We're doing just fine. Just fine. And it got me, I was reading an article over at the Washington Post, and it got me thinking about, these super spreader events that they are going to in no way, shape, or form take any responsibility for. They are encouraging these people to defy science. They are encouraging these people to be packed in like sardines, knowing they're not going to social distance or wear a mask, because you look around the crowd, they're not. And we've seen these events, cases have popped up. And there was an interesting little back and forth over the Rose Garden event, where the White House spokesperson, Judd Dare, he said that, it was, going after this event is nothing but a disgusting fishing expedition to try to tie the White House to an event, more than 4 weeks ago, to a so-called outbreak. With what he said were no scientific or even common sense connections. A second spokesperson, the Post pointed out, characterized the sources of the president's infection as unknowable. And I like what the former director of the CDC under Obama, who said, a guy named Tom Friedman. He said, of course it's knowable. It's only unknowable if you don't want to know. And this is one of those things that it's so simple that that one sentence to me sums up the entire administration. And the people who listen to him and the people who show up to these rallies who believe it's all a hoax. And I've literally had people tell me, day after election, it's all going to go away anyway. As soon as Biden's over, and it's going to be over. Yeah, because he's going to do the right stuff. He's going to follow the playbook that's literally been in place since the George W. Bush years. This was not political. It never was. This was, this happens, this is what you do. It was the flow chart. Evidently, we forgot how to read, or don't bother. But, when you go, it's, this mindset that, it's only unknowable if you don't want to know, applies to, it was like this light bulb for me went on. It applies to virtually everything you want to talk about when you talk to a Trump supporter. Because you have no idea how many times I hear the same frames. It's like they all go to the same church, the church of whatever crazy freaking ideology they have. And it's like, okay, turn to, page 47, read off the, green communism's coming to steal oil and make you, drive a windmill car. Or, the Democrats want to swing the doors wide open and let all those immigrants in, and they're all going to come and live at your house. It's about identity politics. They don't really like black people. It's not about black lives. It's about destroying America. And you go, no, it really is about, people not getting killed in the streets. And the sad thing is, I can go through a bunch of this stuff. Liberals hate religious freedom. No, we love religious freedom. We love the freedom part. The freedom to practice, certainly, absolutely. And the freedom not to. And also the freedom to have you not ram it down our throats. See, that's the part you guys seem to forget. But, there's a whole bunch of these things that they keep throwing out as really very twisted. And again, it comes to they're reading off the same hymnal, and it's only unknowable if you don't know. Joe Biden isn't going to end fracking. He's not. As much as some may want that. And look, I support Joe Biden. I know he's not going to. Healthcare, Biden care is not communist healthcare. It's going to strengthen the ACA a little bit. But it's not going to go to the single payer system that I believe we need to have. One giant insurance pool. It's not going to happen. I see Joe Biden as someone who's going to try and move us to the middle, keep us sane and rational, keep us on a straight line, and not do the insane, crazy things that Trump's done. But I'm not seeing radical change. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to see, and that's our responsibility to push him. But I'm not seeing the communism and all the garbage that's being thrown around. Just not. Anyway, got lots to get to, lots to talk about. Quick break. Right back.
On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. That was the day garment factory owners locked out dressmakers in several shops throughout Los Angeles. The women garment workers, overwhelmingly Mexican, had been organizing with the ILGWU for over a month. They began conducting strikes at selected shops the previous month to press their demands. The women wanted union recognition, a 35-hour work week, end to homework, shop floor committees, a guaranteed wage, and more. Historian Douglas Monroy observed that their demands reflected the harsh working conditions that they faced. It was a volatile, competitive seasonal industry. Businesses worked tirelessly to undercut each other and job out the work. Women workers were routinely unemployed or underemployed, subject to widespread wage theft and discrimination. They were frustrated by promises of the new Industrial Recovery Act, which promised the right to organize but held no provisions for enforcement. Employers flaunted the new legislation and continued to discharge workers for union activity. When the employers forced a lockout, Local 96 looked to the AFL's Central Labor Council to sanction a general dressmakers strike, which started 4 days later on October 12th. As many as 3,000 Latina strikers maintained solid picket lines despite dozens of arrests. ILGWU organizer Rose Posada arrived from New York to help with food distribution and packing the picket lines. The rank-and-file leadership produced a bilingual strike bulletin and made daily radio announcements. The strike ended in arbitration that conceded few gains to the garment workers. But the women of Local 96 continued to organize throughout the Los Angeles area. They led a series of strikes that would eventually win the closed shop. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and the Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So good on my home county of Cuyahoga County there in Cleveland. Evidently, they have indicted this Jacob Wohl and Jack Berkman, I guess is his name. I don't spend a lot of time looking at these guys because they're a bunch of hacks, but evidently they were attempting to do some voter intimidation, a little misinformation, and good on the people there in Cleveland for saying, nope, not going to do it. They face 8 counts of telecommunication fraud and 7 counts of bribery. So hey, hopefully they'll be very popular in prison. Good for them, and good on the people there in my former home county. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, as the days are ticking by, how do we make sure that our votes get cast and then ultimately counted? That's why I have asked our good friend Justin Hendricks to come talk with us. Justin's a volunteer organizer with the Protect the Results Coalition, and he's also one of the writers for the American Interregnum, a pop-up newsletter focused on the transition period from November 4th to the 20th. Justin, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
So, I'm looking at the things like with these 2 crackpots, the intimidation that's going on, the voter suppression that's happening, all of these forces trying to keep us from voting, and the president himself saying today, well, you know what? We're not gonna count all the ballots.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extraordinary situation, and it's been going on now for months that he's been saying things like that, been sort of preparing the ground, salting the earth, making certain that those ballots can't bloom in the states that he doesn't want to see them. If you take what the guy says seriously, he really wants a result on an election night. He wants it all to be over on November 3rd. He expects that he may have some slim advantage on in-person voting in certain states, and that we should call the election based on that, no matter what the actual vote count was. And it seems like that's what the Republican Party's lined up behind him to do.
Yeah, Justin, I'm hoping the vote count is enough that on election night we go, yeah, it's over. I'm hoping it's overwhelming. I'm hoping that we, the people, get out and vote to the point to where there's no question of absentee ballots or hanging chads or scanner problems or any of that stuff, that the tally is so overwhelming there's no questioning it.
Well, the big problem is this go round we have something we didn't have back in the days of the hanging chad in 2000. We have smartphones and social media and the ability to launch a propaganda campaign straight out of your pocket. And it looks like Donald Trump and his campaign are recruiting thousands and thousands of poll watchers, volunteers, to spread out around the country on election day. And a lot of folks have focused on the likelihood they may intimidate voters, that the goal is to keep other voters away from the polls or, make them uncomfortable. But they're actually training them to collect media assets, to film and photo and share what they think of as evidence of potential ballot fraud. And it really does look like a sort of coordinated, propaganda campaign. You had Hogan Gidley on MSNBC last week talking about how, if you look in the local markets, there's evidence of voter and ballot fraud. He used this phrase local markets a couple of times talking to Hallie Jackson. It really sounds like they're kind of prepping that, this sort of bottom up, evidence base of the ballot fraud conspiracy that Donald Trump's been pushing for months.
Yeah, I mean, well, here in Pennsylvania, it's not legal to videotape inside the polling place, and I don't know how it is in other states, but you can tape me all you want outside, inside the polling place. That's not legal. So I guess what happens to them if they do is another question, right?
Yeah, and in fact, in Pennsylvania, I know that there's already been a case of these kind of Trump poll observers attempting to kind of film things, and they have been rebuffed and told they're not allowed to do that sort of thing. So I feel like that's going to be something we'll see play out on election day, and the Trump campaign's goal is for lots of these little, incidents, and who knows what it'll be. It'll probably be the janitor taking out the trash from the, the school that is hosting the election that day. But lots of these little incidents that they can then roll up into a national narrative that will support Donald Trump's bogus claims of voter fraud.
Much like they've done already with the Postal Service. You had a guy in New Jersey, and I forget where the other guy was, who evidently didn't feel like doing his job one day and threw all the mail away. And just a crummy employee who should be fired and nowhere near the Postal Service. It wasn't voter fraud. He had nothing. There just happened to be some ballots in there.
Yeah.
And those weren't cast. So this is one of those moments where you're trying to claim there's voter fraud and it's hurting you, but actually it's not. It's not helping.
There's a similar example in Sonoma County that is been pointed out by various experts. A thing called the 2020 Election Integrity Partnership has looked at this example in particular. Another example of the kind of the dumpster ballot situation where it emerges on Facebook, it gets converted into a right-wing media story on the Blaze or wherever. And then eventually kind of, transmutes itself into more social media and more media coverage. And of course, it takes a couple of days, but the traditional media look at it and quickly debunk the whole idea, find out it wasn't anything at all. But it takes a little while. And I think what the Trump folks are betting on is that in that, 24, 48, 72 hours of uncertainty, they can have at least enough questions that are out there that it can kind of support their effort.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because, I hear a lot of people tell me, well, I saw it on Facebook, and there was an interview with a woman from Pennsylvania. And I forget, I think it was on 60 Minutes or something, where she said she does her research. She's on social media all the time. And I'm going, I don't want to break it to you, but that's not research. That's not actually hard research. That's just things that people have sent you that probably are false, that you've then consumed. And, so, walk me through a little bit of how this works, because I have a lot of people who go, no, I saw it on Facebook, so it's got to be true.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'd actually tell your listeners, Avaz, which is kind of like the international version of Move On, a nonprofit org that's concerned with democracy issues. They just put out a poll yesterday. They did a pretty big polling exercise across the United States and asked voters about a range of different false claims about voter fraud, false claims about the George Floyd incident, a range of things. And unfortunately, they found large numbers of Americans who were exposed to disinformation on Facebook. And in those numbers of Americans, large percentages, unfortunate percentages of people who believe some of those things to be true. So we know that these lies are propagating very quickly, very easily. And we've talked about it on this show before. This has always been something you've been interested in. And it's a major, major issue. People are not checking the veracity of the information. They're not relying on trusted media sources like yourself or other gatekeepers. They want to do that research themselves, and often that leads them down to some rabbit holes where people are sharing bad information.
Yeah, see, I don't consider myself a media outlet. I look at news and I share my opinion, and I think people need to be thinking about that a lot more. Rush Limbaugh is not news. Talk radio is not news. It's people going, this is what's in the news. Here's my opinion. Here's my take on it. What's yours? And I think we need to really start figuring out who the trusted sources are, because I get that all the time. Well, Rush Limbaugh said, so it's got to be true. And you go, it's not. It's his take on it, but it's not actually true.
Yeah, well, I've never known you to manufacture information, and I think that's something that sets you apart.
I try not to
from other media organizations that might. So I do think that's super important, and people should be thinking about that right now. What are the sources of information they're going to trust? We're about to go into an incredible period. The ability for disinformation to flourish, for bad actors, adversaries, even foreign ones, to take advantage of this moment. Yeah. The period between election day and whenever the race is called, and it may be a while. We know it's going to take a while to count those ballots. There are some states where it's just going to take a while to get through it. And like we were talking about, maybe it's a landslide. Maybe there's a result in Florida or North Carolina that gives us an early indication of where it's going. but it might not be. It might be a few days, and we need to be patient, and we need to not fall hook, line, and sinker for every false story that's propagated on
No,
the
you're
internet.
right, and we need to hold firm to we want to count the votes. And this is where my
Absolutely.
fear of Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court puts us back at 2000 again, where we don't. And instead of having the Brooks Brother riots, we actually have real riots with the Boogaloo Boys showing up with their guns, and the militia showing up in Michigan, fully armed to the teeth. I see this as a really, as you've said, a really dangerous time.
Well, one of the things that I'm working on right now, and you mentioned Protect the Results, this is this national coalition of organizations, over 150 organizations at this point, over 400 events that are spread out around the country in most of the major cities, lots of small towns and communities. They're prepared in case Donald Trump comes out on election night before the votes are counted and claims victory, or says that the vote count should be shut down, or attempts to utilize some part of the federal government to interfere in the vote count. If he does any of those things, we're ready to begin mass nonviolent civil demonstrations across the country, because we don't want another one of those Brooks Brothers riot style events that really shuts down the action and pushes the narrative in a single direction. I think we all hopefully learned something over the last 20 years. We can't just wait and see what's going to happen. We need to be prepared to do exactly what you just said, which is to demand that every vote is counted.
And that's not. I know it used to not be a radical thought,
Yeah.
but it kind of, we're kind of in a moment where, there's a good portion of the country that, thinks that is.
Absolutely. I mean, listen to what the Trump administration is arguing in court. We don't think we should have to count these ballots. That's essentially what they're saying. If they don't get in by X date, if the mail is late, if there's a problem. Oh, and by the way, yes, we may have disabled the mail service a bit. We're sorry about that. Oops. But we don't want to count those ballots that arrive. And look, it's an unprecedented situation. People are voting by mail, by absentee, in enormous numbers because of the pandemic. And that's created a real wild card. It's a real situation for a lot of people. It's hard for people to get to the polls. It's dangerous. So, I like you, I find myself, we keep saying like, well, what's the message? The message is count every vote. Why do we have to say that? But we do, and we have to say it again and again and again.
Well, I mean, we live in a country where we're governed by the consent of the governed, us. Our government is, because we give them the power through our will. And if the sanctity of the ballot box isn't protected and the will of the people not done by what happens at the ballot box, what do you have left? This is that moment where, Ben Franklin was asked, what do we got? A republic, if we can keep it. This is one of those, if we can keep it moments.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, just in doing this organizing for Protect the Results, there are people across this country in towns and cities, big and small, who are thinking about this, and they're being very meticulous. They're thinking about how to make sure their voices are heard. They're thinking about how to organize safely nonviolent demonstrations. They're thinking about how to potentially do it for days if it's necessary. Into the middle part or even the end of November and beyond. If you think about, you mentioned 2000. When did Al Gore concede? Was it December 12th when the thing was finally finished? It's almost impossible to imagine America patiently waiting in 2020 from November the 3rd through December the 12th for a result. So, we've got to be ready. We've got to be ready to kind of navigate that period.
Excellent point. Now, let's say there is a decision and it wraps up quickly. I've been saying, the most dangerous time in our country's history is going to be from election day or when it's called until if and when Donald Trump is out of the office. You guys are also working on what the transition is going to look like, because I expect a lot of craziness. And, Bill Clinton's administration was, the claim was they cut all the cords to the computers and they did all kinds of shenanigans. I'm expecting really dangerous, really horribly hateful stuff from this administration on the way out the door. How do we protect ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, Garrett Graff, actually, the writer, had a piece in Politico on this today, which I would tell folks to take a look at if they get a chance. really about all the dangers of this transition period. And there's everything, right? There's the kind of Trump off the hook, lame duck Trump, completely nothing to lose, pardoning every last crook and criminal that he's come across. Who knows, doing what sorts of deals to enrich himself or prepare for his post-election career, whatever that might look like. Continuing to rile his base and tell them that the election was illegitimate. Who knows? Maybe he'll even start having rallies before the inauguration and the transition's over. And then there are the more basic things. Does he destroy files? Do they start to otherwise kind of interfere in the transition of the government? And those are real concerns. There are lots of experts out there right now thinking through, what are the legal remedies and what are things that can be done.
Yeah. Last line of question I've got for you. What's the advice for people who haven't voted yet? Like, I took my ballot to the box. I put it in the drop box. I'm done. But people who haven't voted, what's the marching order? What advice are you giving?
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally, I can't tell everybody what to do in their locality. I'd say listen to your local your election officials and take their advice. I'm hearing a lot of folks say if you have the option to, rather than putting your ballot in the mail, to taking it to a secure location, a drop box, that's a good idea. Here in New York, for instance, you can take your ballot to the early polling locations and drop it off there. I'm sure that's the case in various other jurisdictions. And it seems like that's something that gives people a little bit of a sense of security. I know my ballot reached, its destination before Election Day. Yep. But, we want to make sure that every vote is counted. So we'll continue to advocate for that.
Good stuff.
And I just tell folks, go to protecttheresults.com if you want to check this out, want to get engaged. There's opportunities.
Right. You beat me to it. Protecttheresults.com. We'll get links out on social media how people can take a look at it. I dropped my ballot in the drop box. The next day I got an email back saying, hey, we got it. You're all good. Which I think is a really good system, and I'm really happy with that. I'm like you said, I'm saying don't put anything in the mail at this point. Mm-hmm. Don't risk it, especially where I'm at in Pennsylvania, because who knows what our Supreme Court does. But Justin, I appreciate the time and the work that you guys do. Keep up the great stuff.
Rick, thank you.
Good stuff, Justin Hendricks. Make sure, again, you check out the website, protecttheresults.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1861. That was the day that the Pony Express made its last run and passed into legend. The mail delivery service had lasted only a year and a half, until it folded under competition from the newly completed transcontinental telegraph. The idea for a faster Western mail delivery service came from the owners of the wagon freight company, Russell, Majors, and Waddell. At the time, the railroad terminated in St. Joseph, Missouri. The goal of the Pony Express route was to cover the 2,000-mile route from St. Joe to San Francisco in 10 days, or half the time of competitors. Riders would travel between one station and another on horseback, switching horses as they went. For this arduous job, the company targeted young men, sometimes in their teens. The goal was to hire small men to keep the weight low for the horses. The riders had to sign a pledge not to drink, gamble, fight, or swear. To back up the clean living, they were each issued a Bible. Riders were paid a minimum of $50 per month, in addition to room and board. The riders faced many hazards, from bad weather to thieves. They often traveled across lands in dispute between the U.S. government and Native Americans, adding to the potential danger. The fastest express delivery ever was Lincoln's inaugural address, which made it to California in under 8 days. Perhaps the most famous person who claimed to be a Pony Express rider was Buffalo Bill Cody, although it's unlikely he ever carried the mail. He incorporated the Pony Express into his Wild West show, turning the mail service into the stuff of legend. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So at the end of it, the key is make sure you vote. November 3rd is just right around the corner, and as I've been saying for the last couple of days, do not put it in the mail. Take it to your polling place. Take it to the Dropbox location. Call your elections office. Make sure that they have a place for you to put it. Or, here in Pennsylvania, you take it to the polls, you hand it in on the 3rd, and you cast your ballot that way. I would not trust putting anything in the mail. Just my thoughts, because I still don't believe that it's settled here in Pennsylvania. I know the Supreme Court said they're not going to take it up again, but I don't know. So make sure you vote. And I'm excited to talk to my next guest, who is out there, telling people across the country to do just that. Get out and vote. She is the bringer of the light. The women of steel with the steelworkers are going around the country with their bat light, shining the light of freedom on buildings across the country. And here to share some thoughts on what the light is and why the bat light's out there, I've asked Amber Miller to come talk with us. She is one of the women of steel and the bringer of the light. Amber, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, no problem, Rick. How are you?
I'm good. I got to tell you, I've been following you guys on Twitter. I've been following the pictures. Amazing stuff. Just incredible stuff. And we're flashing some of them on our social media. But really great stuff.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Appreciate it. The more folks who get to see that stuff, that's our hope. It's kind of a different way of messaging right now, considering that, typical election work that workers would be hitting doors and having conversations. So this is a COVID-friendly, kind of out-of-the-box messaging campaign here.
So now you got this giant projector. You're going around. You were in Chicago. You put it on Wrigley Field, the art museum, a whole bunch of places. Big giant signs of vote, get out, vote, do that stuff. What kind of response are you getting from people?
To be honest, it's been fairly good. The communities we go into, we haven't, we put a lot of thought into it. There are communities that are, typically more blue leaning. We're not going to go into places to agitate folks on purpose. So, a lot of times we'll have people stop. They want to get a picture, or, I remember being in Pittsburgh where we were out kind of in the different neighborhoods, shining it on some murals, and a guy actually walked up and he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't know where my polling place is." So we were able to pull up a phone. "Hey brother, here's where you go." And he's like, "Hey, thanks." So it's stuff like that that's been kind of cool, just different conversations, it's been good.
No, I mean, and I wish there was more of that. I mean, I'm a big fan of engagement. I'm a big fan of participatory democracy, and this is part of having those conversations that I think working people need to have.
It absolutely is. One of the most important things that we could do as working people is make sure we exercise our right to vote. It's been clear on the labor side in the last 3.5 years what happens if we don't, because it's more than just an office that somebody goes into. It's all the agencies that, that person appoints to. It's 3 Supreme Court justices in one term that get appointed. So, this stuff is really, really important for folks to, really get involved in democracy right now.
Yeah. So how did you come up with the idea of the bat light? I mean, for those who don't know, who are listening on radio, you and 3 other women go around and flash a giant projector on the side of a building with, whatever message you've got, kind of like the bat signal when, we're calling out for some help. Who came up with this idea? How'd you come up with this?
So actually, the bat light has been around the steelworker family for a few years now. It's something that we've used in contract campaigns. So, to offer support to folks who are either in a labor dispute or a rough round of negotiations. We'll put a nice, solidarity message or a fair contract now or something like that in different spaces, just to sort of bring a little, fun to folks, give them some hope the folks that are within the local. And so, with this whole pandemic stuff, just everything that we're doing is just sort of out of the box. And we were like, maybe we can use some different messaging in that. So one of them was, one of the messages we use is make a plan to vote. And so to really get folks thinking about, particularly in the last few weeks, are you mailing your ballot in? Are you making a plan to vote early? Are you leaving time the day, election day, to go if that's, if you want to go do that in person? And then the other one is the Biden-Harris message, just so folks know that's who we're backing.
Right. And look, I do some work for the Teamsters, and they're as well backing Biden and Harris, and it's quite simple. It's, this administration has, honestly and truthfully, been horrible for organized labor and for workers in general. You can go through all of the NLRB decisions that have come down. You can go through what the Labor Department has done. We've got, a former Walmart attorney as the head of the Department of Labor. There's a problem there.
Yeah. And I appreciate actually this round how thoughtful the steelworkers were about who we backed. Way back in January, we actually surveyed our members on, what are the things that matter to you and your family? What are your issues? So healthcare, retirement security, health and safety, our collective bargaining rights, really just 5 to 6 core issues really popped up. And so we based our candidate surveys off those issues. And so when folks said they wanted our endorsement, we sent them to the survey, and we endorsed based off that. So to be honest, we did send that survey to the president, and he did not return it. So Vice President Biden did, and his answers were spot on and in line with our core values from our union. So I just really appreciate that thought process behind it,
right,
instead of just jumping the gun and endorsing whomever.
Yeah, I mean, I love the leadership of your president, Tom Conway. I think you guys have done some incredible stuff, and this is part of it. It's getting out in the community and engaging people, and not just your members alone, but all working people. And I think that's important. Now, I got to tell you, I'm a little jealous. I love the fact that you get to go around to all these cool places, and you get to see all this stuff. And I know these are long days. You're probably working 16, 18 hours every day, but you get to go to some pretty cool places and see some pretty cool stuff.
I originally came out of Ohio before I took a job with the steelworkers, and so I'm not totally familiar with Pennsylvania. And we've spent a lot of time there, but we've been up in Wisconsin, in Michigan, Ohio, kind of all the battleground states. But some of the communities that I have been able to go into and see, they're beautiful. And we really look at places that, what's iconic to the area. We're finding all these amazing murals that are painted in the community to be able to highlight a little bit. So it has really just been much more than, just something we're doing for the election. It's really been personally, I think it's really been an incredible experience. And the 3 women that I'm working with, they're all staff with the steelworkers. Everybody's got something that drives them to do this work. And it's just really been an awesome experience to be able to do it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the book, because I want to see the book of all the buildings that you've put it on. You've got to put one together. It's got to be a must. So what buildings, what places are your favorite places? I mean, I saw that you actually put the Biden-Harris steelworker logo on Trump Tower, and I go, that's got to be right up there at the top. But what's your favorite?
To be honest, yeah, that was neat, and that was something just to sort of bring attention to the whole project as a whole. But I think the real important work is the work that we do in the communities. And honestly, I think some of my favorite spots were like we went to Lambeau Field and put it on the front of Lambeau Field, and we were out there with some of the political casuals that are out, doing the lit drops and doing the phone banking and really just working their tails off, during this cycle and in a completely different way. And so that, I feel like that's one of the coolest places that we've been. We went up to the Iron Range and got to just really look at some of those mining communities. And for me, like I like the community stuff a little bit better.
No, I can see that. We did a labor history tour back in 2013, and as we were going across the country, it's outside of the ribs that it was kind of a rib tour, but outside of that, it was the stories that we collected from people and what they shared of their lives with us that I held most closely, and what made it into our book that we came out of after the tour, which is why I think this would be one of those moments where putting this into a book form and selling it as the experience that you're talking about, the people that you meet and the stories they hear, I think would be a fantastic thing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if this is something that will ever happen again, but I'm just really blessed that I have a union that thinks outside of the box and does some of this work. But I tell you, I agree with you. Getting into the communities and just helping people realize that steelworkers are part of the community, right? Yeah. I mean, we're in there. We're coaches for our kids' softball teams. We're going to the churches. We're sitting at the corner bar. I mean, that's a neat part of it.
Yeah, I saw some pictures where it looks like you just flashed it on somebody on people's houses, which I thought, how do I get a picture of that on my house?
Actually, we've been very, very careful. We did put it on a house this week, but that was Joe Biden's boyhood home, and we had permission, and the current owners were pretty excited about it. So we're pretty careful to make sure that we don't do anything that's rude or something to anybody. Yeah.
No, you don't want to be that way. I get that. But if you're in central Pennsylvania, by all means, swing by and you can put it on my house, because I'm sure it would make my neighbors just beyond thrilled. All of the Trump signs that surround me. Although we have a couple Biden signs. I'm very happy at this time around. Real quick, I do want to talk about the Women of Steel, because the steel workers have been at the forefront of pushing women in unions and women's rights. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes to what is Women of Steel?
Women of Steel is just, it started out as an avenue for, women in our union, a couple of decades ago, just to have a pathway for more education, to get into leadership positions in their locals, to be more involved in the community. And it's just really there are so many sisters in our union that just do amazing work. I've seen, not just in the community, but I've seen sisters really drive contract proposals that are important to, the folks that they work with. And it's typical, and they get that because of the education, the Women of Steel program puts on, and just the political action, the legislative action. They're out there lobbying in their state houses. They're going to D.C. and they're lobbying, and it's just an incredible program. And what's really nice too is to see within the leadership of our union, women be in positions. Roxanne Brown is the vice president at large in our union. So it's been a pleasure just to watch these folks. There's a lot of our departments within the union that are led by women, so maybe not the most forefront facing, but, sisters that are really making decisions and working hard for our members.
And also bringing us the light, the bringer of the light. Amber, I think you guys are doing fantastic work, and I hope you'll keep it up. How long do you plan on taking this? Because we might not know, after Election Day. Is Election Day the end of the light, or do you see this going on beyond?
Well, it's the planned end for the project, but listen, if we just need to keep shedding a light on, making sure that every vote that's cast is counted and counted fairly, then we're going to keep doing that.
Because I can see it now. Count the votes. We need the big bat light, and maybe shine that on the Supreme Court to tell them that we need to have the votes count. Because I don't know about you, but I'm a little concerned that with a 6-3 corporate court like we now have, that maybe especially after Kavanaugh's response the other day, that we might not be counting the votes. So we may need the light.
Yeah, we actually were having a conversation about that in the car tonight when we were out and about, seeing these different state decisions that are coming down, and there's some very ominous kind of answers coming out of the Supreme Court in kind of laying it out there that this might not be over. And so I think it's important, like we need to make sure that every single person who is registered to vote has their vote counted.
Yeah, I'm right there. So last line of questioning I've got for you. The light is moving. Where is the light tonight, and where's the light going in the next couple of days till Election Day?
We are in the Philadelphia area right now, so we're probably going to hang in Pennsylvania, being it's a battleground state, so we'll be moving around probably the eastern side through Election Day. So.
All right, so if you're in the Philly area, make sure that you find the light. Seek out the light. Do you get little crowds to come and hang out, or what kind of initial response do you get?
Pretty good. I mean, we were in Madison, Wisconsin.
I love Madison.
And we it's a beautiful, beautiful city. But we had just a kind of make a plan to vote on the State House, and folks just came out of restaurants. They came, they stopped their cars. They're like, this is so cool, and it was just. It's such an opportunity. It's just different, different. Yeah. It's by no means meaning to be disrespectful in any way.
Yeah.
It's just a different way, out of the box.
And, since you brought up Madison and the Capitol, we were there in 2011 sleeping on the granite floor.
I was there too. Yep.
During the uprising. And, now my mind goes, damn, we could have had the bat light back then.
Yep, there's lots of opportunity here.
Yeah, well, keep the bat light shining. Amber, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the work you guys do. Keep it up. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Amber Miller. The bringer of the light. And like I said, we flashed a couple of the pictures, and you can check out their Twitter feed, which has a bunch of the photos of the light at USW Bat. If you check it out on Twitter, and we'll get it out on our social media feeds so you can take a look at the lights. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a good thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1965. That was the day that the St. Louis Gateway Arch was completed in St. Louis. The project was the result of a nationwide design competition. The arch soars 630 feet above the ground and is the highest monument in the United States. The arch was made from 900 tons of stainless steel. It was meant to symbolize St. Louis's role as gateway to Western expansion. The groundbreaking ceremony for the project was held in 1959. Workers from multiple unions were involved in building the arch. 250 Boilermakers from Local 659 in Warren, Pennsylvania, built the arch sections. Iron workers completed the on-site assembly. Electricians and plumbers were involved in the construction as well. According to historian Clarence Lang, the construction of the arch also became a focus of local activists' frustration by the lack of integration in federally funded construction projects. In July of 1964, Percy Green, a black activist, and Richard Daley, a white activist, scaled up 125 feet of the unfinished arch. The 29-year-old Green was the chairman of the Employment Committee for the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE. As Green and Daley perched on the arch, they shut down construction that day. Other protesters held a press conference below. They demanded that 10% of the work on the project be provided to African Americans. No black workers were hired as skilled craftsmen on the project. After 4 hours, the men climbed down and were arrested. The action brought media attention to the lack of black workers, not just at the St. Louis Arch, but at construction projects throughout the nation. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
As a Texas high schooler many moons ago, I was the 115-pound outside linebacker on the Denison Yellow Jackets football team. Go Bugs! We won very few games, but we had spirit and some fun. Our coach, a down-to-earth fellow, paid a modest public school salary, tried to instill a bit of the sporting ethic in us. Win or lose, give it your best. There is no I in team, stuff like that. So whistle me out of bounds in the game of life, but I'm somewhere between sad and disgusted that the self-centered corporate ethic, survival of the greediest, is becoming the guiding spirit of even amateur games. The decline is most prevalent in big-time football programs where coaches make millions while the actual athletes are paid nothing and face crippling, even life-threatening injuries. But when the pandemic slammed into college budgets, squeezing out professors, students, and workers, the old-school spirit kicked in and coaches made widely publicized sacrifices, accepting pay cuts of 15 to 20%. Yay, coach! Only it was a scam. Their cuts only applied to their base salary, not the full compensation they actually get. North Carolina coach Mac Brown, for example, draws $750,000 in base pay, which ain't bad, but his full paycheck is $3.5 million a year. So his ballyhooed sacrifice is really only 3%. He's still taking about $3.4 million in pay. But wait, the scam gets scummier, for even these minimal cuts are just deferments in pay. University of Texas coach Tom Herman, for example, took a $500,000 cut, but with a cynical wink, the university promised to give that same sum back to him within 3 years. This is Jim Hightower saying, what models of sporting character they are, teaching young people that it's not how you play the game that counts, but whether you win.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it almost feels like I have to do the obligatory, you gotta vote. Make sure you get your ballot in. If you're doing the early voting thing, by all means, take it to the polling place or to the drop box location, whatever is applicable in your area. And if not, you show up on election day, get your hazmat suit on, stay safe, but down to crunch time. Anyway, it is our Badass Tuesday. Tuesday. It's Wednesday, isn't it? I'm literally losing days. It's our weekly Badass Teachers segment where we highlight what is going on in the world of education. And that's why I've asked Gregory Sampson to come talk with us. He's a writer over at Grumpy Old Teacher blog. Greg, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
You ever feel that you're just losing days?
Yes. In fact, this week I have to keep telling myself today's not Thursday, and day after tomorrow I do have to go to work.
It just doesn't end. So let me ask you. In your neck of the woods, you're in, I guess, Florida, right?
Right.
I know they swung the doors open. How are things going in your neck of the woods?
Well, things are rather interesting because the pandemic is running through, although the governor insisted all the children could come back to school and there's no risk to anybody who's not an adult. Our school was dealing with a running caseload. It began a couple weeks ago, and Department of Health found where one student tested positive, and they traced the cases and called several up and told them to quarantine. And then they had another group, so they were put on quarantine. And today we were calling more kids out of class and sending them home, telling their parents they had to come and pick them up. And my colleague who teaches geometry, as I do mostly, was told at 2:15 to go home immediately, and she has to quarantine for 14 days. So despite our governor's assertion that teenagers don't get it and they can't spread it, it's taking place in our school.
Yeah, we're hearing these stories, and the other thing that we're hearing is, I don't know if you saw this story out of Utah where they've got these mothers who have taken the mom code, who are saying that even if their kids are sick, they're not going to get them tested and they're not going to tell anybody about it. So we're in this really crazy world of just you don't know what's going on or who to trust or where to go with it.
Yeah, it's really strange. I mean, I get that the kids miss their activities, but we got to keep them safe. One of the things, and I try to make this clear to the students, is it's been portrayed so far in media and everything that's going on, it's life or death, and it's not life or death. Most young people will recover, but it's a vascular disease. We're finding out it causes damage, heart damage. What was it in college? Like 1/3 of the players have some type of heart ongoing damage, the football players.
Yeah.
So it's not just you get it and recover, it's what are you going to be impaired through life because unnecessary risks were taken.
That's what pre-existing condition are you going to end up with on the other side when very soon we're going to make pre-existing conditions something insurance companies don't have to cover.
Right, yes.
No, I mean, it's screwy times because I hear the same thing. Well, it's not as deadly as they say it is. I go, no, it's not as deadly. It's not going to kill you immediately. But like you said, it could be something that lingers. And more importantly, we could overtax our healthcare facilities to the point to where, we slam them. And then people who are having real emergencies have nowhere to go. Where you take up all the beds who are people on ventilators and the guy having a heart attack or a stroke, kind of out of luck.
Well, that's the stat we're watching in Florida, the number of hospitalizations, because despite, you can say number of cases and then you hear, well, it's only because we're testing so much. Well, I prefer to live my life in knowledge, not ignorance. Test, and let's find out the real number. But the one stat you can't fake is hospitalizations. People showing up at the hospital, they have it, and they have to be put into a bed and treated. That one's real, and it's going up.
Yeah, now I read your most recent piece over at the Grumpy Old Teacher blog. If folks want to take a look at it, they can go to grumpyoldteacher.com. It's titled "When the Lights Go Out," where you're basically talking about being in a classroom where they don't even trust you to turn the lights on and off without having a switch that shuts it off. Walk me through some of it.
Well, that's been there for a long time. So I'm just trying to give people a sense of what it's like because our school district, I guess they thought too many teachers weren't doing the job last spring, just posting a video up and telling kids to watch it, not bother doing the actual work from home. So they told us we all had to report to the classroom and work out of the classroom, even if we are teaching remote classes.
Right.
And 2/3 of my classes are remote. And so there is a motion detector. Now, when students are in the room, it's no problem. They're fidgety, they move around. But when it's just me sitting at my desk, and this is what really gripes me, I'm not moving around because I'm sitting at my desk doing the job they want me to do. And since there's no motion in the room, the lights go out. About every 10 minutes, they turn out because the sensor thinks the room is empty, and it takes the air conditioning out with it. And this is Florida. And we haven't quite hit our fall season yet. It's supposed to be 90 degrees tomorrow, and that's in Jacksonville. So it's not just getting the lights back on so I can do my work, but also I have to walk over to the thermostat and tap that to keep the room at a decent temperature.
Yeah, I mean, and as I was reading through that, I'm thinking about my kids' teachers because, they're doing the online classes as well. And, wonder, and I'm, thinking, do they have to show up to work or do we trust them enough to stay home and do the online stuff at home? And I haven't gotten the answer to that yet.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to. Like teachers are being told to quarantine. They're trying to figure out how they can teach from home because nobody wants to take 2 weeks of leave and sit at home and do nothing when they still feel healthy and they want to be teaching. Most teachers are very, very dedicated, and they don't want to be out of the building. They understand the need to quarantine if they're told to, but they want to still find a way to keep teaching, even from home.
Yeah, because this is a tough time, and I worry about my kids. We've got one in 6th grade and one in 9th grade now, and for both of them, this is the first year in a new building, the first year moving into a new structure, if you will, and having this on top of that kind of change, I think is a lot, and I fear that they fall behind. I fear that all of our kids end up falling behind, because we're not. I don't think the online stuff is as good as the in the classroom stuff.
No, it's not, and it's part of the nature, and it's part of the misconception. So one of the things we've had to learn as teachers is that teaching online, we're not just taking what we do in the classroom and we're just doing it over the computer, turn the camera on, and talk to the kids through some type of Zoom or similar platform. It's not the same, so it has to be planned differently. And that's what I've been working on in the fall, is realizing, how do I plan for effective engagement and instruction when they sit at home by themselves?
Right.
One of the big differences that I've noticed is they don't talk very much. Even though I encourage them, if you have something to say, you have a question to ask, unmute your mic and speak up, they really don't talk much. And I guess that's, they're sitting at home, they're alone, trying to focus on their studies and everything, and it's just not the same as being with their peers and feeling that social engagement as to what's going on. So that means we need different types of activities to try to get effective learning taking place.
Or they're doing something else.
Well, that happens too.
my favorite picture when they talk about Cyber Charter Day, there's always the on social media promoting Cyber Charter and how wonderful Cyber Charter is, even though we know here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania it's an abysmal failure. But my favorite picture is always the kid who's sitting in front of 2 or 3 computer screens, the one that has his test, and then the 2 that he's looking things up to cheat on, or talking to his other friends to be able to cheat on. That's always my favorite. But you in your piece, you talk a little bit about technology, and do you reach out to parents if kids don't show up to class? And there's a lot of this back and forth kind of, we don't know what kind of world that things are going on, and I started thinking about, when I was a kid, I lived in a really poverty-ridden area where I guarantee none of the people would have had internet or the ability to have computers or decent speeds or anything like that. So I think it puts you guys in a real tough spot.
It does. Now, our district, they've tried. They were putting computers into schools. So last spring, they took all the student laptops out of the schools and they passed them out to families. And they've done more of that this fall. And they're really committed, and they've leased a whole bunch more. So this fall, they're trying to get 1-to-1. So where every secondary student, 6th grade and higher, has been issued their own school laptop to work on. Of course, that's difficult if they have 2 or 3 brothers and sisters at home and they're all trying to share the Wi-Fi signal. That causes problems for them. We have given out the hotspots, so if they need help with a Wi-Fi connection, they can also sign out a school hotspot. So we're trying to get around the technology issues, but some of them, mom buys a new computer for the home office, so she passes that one down. So a lot of times they're working on devices that are 3, 4, 5 years old or older, and they're just much slower, and it's more difficult. Some of them try to do it on their phone, and that doesn't always work out well.
I mean, I know we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and there's a lot of uncertainty. But to me, this moment is one of those highlighting moments of, we need major infrastructure changes, we need major investments, and I just don't see us moving for it. The fact that our broadband access is so pathetic, our internet speeds are horrible. The rest of the developed world laughs at us for how much we spend for how little we get, but we're Americans.
Yeah, well, that's where I saw a piece this week, and I don't remember who wrote it, but they're talking about we need to look at our internet and the Wi-Fi like we did in the 1930s with electricity. You know, it's more of a public good, and we should, as a nation, commit to extending it to every home, everywhere.
No, absolutely, without question. I love some of the story. There's a story somewhere in Tennessee where the little city had come up with, as a citizen, you get access to the citywide Wi-Fi, and they basically Wi-Fi'd the whole city. I think something like that has to be looked at. And it's got to be decent. I mean, doing this show, and I do some Zoom calls with people. Just the internet capability of most people is just terrible. So last line of questioning I've got for you, because we're in the middle of this, and we're heading into what I think is going to be an ugly period. To this point, how do you think schools are doing in keeping students safe and protecting the community?
I think what I experience is the school's doing the best they can, and the real big shout out, at least at my school, has to go to the students themselves. We've asked them to wear a mask when they're on campus, and they comply. People were worried, they're not going to wear the mask, they want to take it off, and it does get uncomfortable because they have to wear it all day, and anybody who wears a mask, and I hope we all are, knows that after a while our breath is moist, the inside gets moist, and that doesn't feel good against the face. But they do wear their masks. Sometimes they slip down, but every time I tell them, pull it up, cover your nose, they do it. It's a lot of teaching. I explain to them, we breathe through our noses. So if you don't wear it over your nose, you might as well not bother wearing it at all.
Unless you're going to stop breathing.
Yeah, right, unless you're going to stop breathing. The hard part is the social distancing, trying to maintain the distance. It's just not happening. And it's hard because the way we organize, now we're lucky, some schools, the teachers are teaching half the classes in the room, half the classes at home, and they're trying to teach both at the same time. And that's just a bizarre situation. At least in my district, they separated it. So there are in-person classes and at-home classes, but it's not the same group that one teacher deals with at any one time. But that means that when I have a classroom, I have a full classroom. I have 2 in-person classes, and the kids, I have like 30 kids in a room. So they're sitting next to one another.
Wow.
You can't keep them separated. So then if you're making them sit next to one another in the classroom, how do you tell them when they go out into the hallway, well, you got to be 6 feet apart now? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how the next couple of months play out. I hope you guys stay safe. I hope nothing horrible happens, and I appreciate you taking some time for us.
Well, I appreciate you letting me on to talk about it.
Anytime. Good stuff, Greg. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Greg Sampson, writer over at the Grumpy Old Teacher blog, which I highly suggest. Take a look at it. grumpyoldteacher.com, the website. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to the Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. That was the day garment factory owners locked out dressmakers in several shops throughout Los Angeles. The women garment workers, overwhelmingly Mexican, had been organizing with the ILGWU for over a month. They began conducting strikes at selected shops the previous month to press their demands. The women wanted union recognition, a 35-hour work week, end to homework, shop floor committees, a guaranteed wage, and more. Historian Douglas Monroy observed that their demands reflected the harsh working conditions that they faced. It was a volatile, competitive seasonal industry. Businesses worked tirelessly to undercut each other and job out the work. Women workers were routinely unemployed or underemployed, subject to widespread wage theft and discrimination. They were frustrated by promises of the new Industrial Recovery Act, which promised the right to organize but held no provisions for enforcement. Employers flaunted the new legislation and continued to discharge workers for union activity. When the employers forced a lockout, Local 96 looked to the AFL's Central Labor Council to sanction a general dressmakers strike, which started 4 days later on October 12th. As many as 3,000 Latina strikers maintained solid picket lines despite dozens of arrests. ILGWU organizer Rose Posada arrived from New York to help with food distribution and packing the picket lines. The rank-and-file leadership produced a bilingual strike bulletin and made daily radio announcements. The strike ended in arbitration that conceded few gains to the garment workers. But the women of Local 96 continued to organize throughout the Los Angeles area. They led a series of strikes that would eventually win the closed shop.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Remember back in 2018, there was a newspaper column that was all the rage, that the New York Times actually said they verified who the person was, that there was an actual person, and they weren't going to tell who the person was. It was penned under the name Anonymous. Supposedly somebody within the Trump White House who was working to, well, not let Trump screw everything up. And basically came out and said, look, there's a bunch of us here who see him as a, not just an ineffective leader, but terrible, horrible for democracy, horrible for the country. And, we need to be protected. In 2019, they wrote a book, talking about how utterly dysfunctional the White House was and how utterly dysfunctional Trump was. Remember, this is one of his guys. We now have a name. Now, understand, this is the guy who said that there were people inside the cabinet ready to retire, to resign, just to flee at the insanity that they were seeing. And that there was actual talk of invoking the 25th Amendment as a way of getting. Now, this is, again, before any Democrat did anything. Just to kind of throw that out there. Well, we now know who that anonymous person is. A guy named Miles Taylor. Miles was the former chief of staff for the Department of Homeland Security. He has come out and endorsed Joe Biden by saying that this is it's a referendum. It's a two-part. This election, he said, is a two-part referendum. First, on the character of a man, and second, on the character of our nation. He said in a written statement, that's why I'm urging fellow Republicans to put country over party, even if that means supporting Trump's Democratic opponent. You put this with Jeff Flake, the former senator from Arizona, who uttered the same words. I've never voted for a Democrat in my life, never thought I would, but this is a moment of putting the country over the party in the hopes, and Flake went to the part of, in the hopes of saving both. And this election cycle, I have to say, is, and maybe someone can tell me if I'm wrong, there were a few defectors that I remember during the George W. Bush years. I don't remember really any during the HW years. This election is the most Republicans going, hey, I got to put, this is too far. We bought the T-shirt, and it's too small now. We now gotta fix this. And there've been a couple of stories of, and this is why there's part of me that's, I'm not feeling confident, not at all, but feeling a little bit better about maybe there's hope. Maybe there's hope for our country after all, that maybe the sane and the rational among us, maybe the sane and the rational in the Republican Party, if there are still some left, will take them somewhere near the sane line. And I've been calling that for years. I've been asking for the Republicans to take their party away back towards somewhere sane. Because look, during the Reagan years, during the H.W. Bush years, you disagreed, but you were somewhere between the curbs. You're still on the road. Now we're not even on the tree lawn or the sidewalk. We're in the backyard of somebody's house throwing bombs in everybody's way. So the hope is that by having guys like this, guys like Flake, who have seen this stuff, have seen how dysfunctional Trump is, how dysfunctional this administration is, maybe there's hope. Now, where I go, I'm not sure. The place where I go, I'm not quite sure that I'm ready to jump on the hope wagon, is I look at someone like Lindsey Graham, who Trump basically used in the 2016 campaign as a verbal punching bag. He was basically a chew toy for Trump. And, I love what Lindsey said the other day. He said something along the lines of, well, he used to treat me bad, but then, then we start getting along. He says, we got off to a rocky start. He beat me up pretty badly. We've got something in common. I like him and he likes me. And this is one of those weird kind of statements that when I read it, I'm going, Lindsey, he's thrown you under the bus. And a lot of reports have come out of South Carolina that Trump has literally done nothing to help Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey has done everything possible, everything he can do to appease the dear leader, and no love whatsoever. Have you seen Trump, doing big rallies out there for Lindsey? I haven't. I haven't seen it. So the question you got to ask is, again, that loyalty thing, isn't that kind of a two-way street? And I'm hoping Lindsey Graham loses. There's part of me that goes, I'm looking at the Senate, I'm going, there's hope. And as I've said before, if I have to lose one, I'd rather lose the White House. Give me the Senate over the White House. But I'd like to have both. I'd like to be able to have the Democrats in this moment have complete control so we can right the ship. We can undo the damage that this president has done, undo all of those insane executive orders, taking away power from working people, making our environment less safe, the deregulation that they've gone and pushed through, and hopefully mitigate some of the damage. Now, the Supreme Court, I don't see how you're going to fix that without putting additional justices on the court. Do I think it's going to happen? Someone asked me today. I go, I actually don't. But I'd like to. Because at some point, we're going to go back policy-wise 100 years. And it's one of these moments. And, I allowed myself to get into this exercise of, do you know what you're asking for? Do you know what, there's a hillbilly song, this Garth Brooks song about, unanswered prayers. Boy, something about, he didn't marry somebody, and boy, thank God I didn't do that. And I get that. This is one of those moments of, are you sure you want what's coming? Because you're going to get it. Are you sure you want to go back 100 years to the Lochner era, where there are no labor laws, where the environmental laws are so weak that nobody pays attention to them? Do you really want corporate power to increase? Do you really want monopolies to grow larger? Do you really want the wealth class to grow even larger than they are and have even more outweighted power in our politics? Do you really want that? Do you want a government run on patronage? Do you want to return to the days of patronage? Do you really want that? And do you know what that is? And sadly, most people don't get past, I bought the t-shirt. For me, it's the policies. It's the stuff that we're going to have to live with for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. The stuff we're going to saddle our kids with. So the team sport's all fine, well and good. Yeah, we won. But do you know what you're going to win? Because I talk to union members every day now. None of them know the horrible things this administration has done to them, making it harder for them to negotiate the next contract that's going to make sure that they get decent wages, hours, and conditions. None of them know that the pendulum is swinging even farther towards corporate power over their ability to defend themselves. But they bought the shirt. They got the hat. And the flag, all made in China, but they got them. Scary times. Scary times. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. My friend Bob Ney is going to be here to share some thoughts on, well, a couple of days. We're counting down to Election Day. Right back after this.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
This is storm number 27, by the way. 28 is the record, so we're only one away.
Yet another hurricane takes aim at the Gulf Coast.
The winds came with a vengeance, flames and thick smoke darkening the sky.
Yet another round of hurricane-force winds and fires in California and Colorado. Plus,
you both have very different visions on climate change.
Truth and nonsense on climate change at the final presidential debate of 2020.
All of that truth and nonsense straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand back and stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
They want to spend $100 trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows.
Yes, so you can open them with your little, tiny, small hands. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we are officially out of Greek letters that I know in the alphabet. So where are we now in this record-breaking storm season?
We are now up to Hurricane Zetta, another hurricane for the Gulf of Mexico. It is on track to strike near the Louisiana-Alabama border around Wednesday. Yes, we are now into the Greek alphabet because there have been so many storms in this historic 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. Zetta is the earliest 27th named storm in recorded history, arriving a full month earlier than the previous record 27th storm that hit back in 2005. Zetta is the 11th named storm to landfall in the continental United States, and that is a new record for the most U.S. landfalling storms in a single year. And Zetta also sets a new record for Louisiana as the 5th named storm to hit the state in a single season. That is a very unwelcome new record, I should add.
Poor Louisiana. Let's hope that Zetta may not hit Louisiana after all.
I don't think there's a chance of that, but let's hope that the impacts are minimal.
Okay.
Meanwhile, out west,
two of the largest fires in Colorado's history are burning dangerously close together, and there are fears that they could merge into one gigantic inferno.
Of course they will.
In Colorado, some snow has finally arrived to help firefighters slow the spread of two of the largest wildfires in state history, the Cameron Peak Fire and the East Troublesome Fire, very well named. They're both burning in the same county and could merge. The growing fires have forced the evacuation of thousands of residents and the closure of Rocky Mountain National Park. The three largest fires in Colorado state history have all hit since July of this year.
Still just a coincidence, just like the, 5 of the 6 largest fires in state history out here in California happen to all hit this year?
Yep, and in Southern California, 2 firefighters have been critically injured, and mandatory evacuations have been ordered for 100,000 residents during a pandemic due to the fast growth of the Silverado fire that erupted on Monday near Irvine, south of Los Angeles. Nearly the entire state is now facing a new round of extreme fire weather with dangerous hurricane-force winds and extremely low humidity. Utilities cut electricity to thousands across the state so that their equipment didn't spark new fires.
It is late October. How long is this fire season expected to continue?
Fire season's pretty much year-round now, so good luck with guessing that one. Finally, in the final presidential debate of the endless 2020 election, Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden laid out starkly different visions on climate change. Donald Trump has presented no formal plan to address climate change, and indeed plans to further expand domestic fossil fuel extraction, making climate change even worse. Trump again took credit for President Obama's policies that have reduced air and water pollution and carbon emissions, along with delivering some colorful lies about windows and birds and wind energy and more. Biden pressed his $2 trillion plan to reinvigorate the U.S. economy and create millions of jobs by acting to solve climate change.
$2 trillion?
$2 trillion.
Donald Trump says it's $100 trillion.
And Donald Trump is lying.
Oh.
Biden's plan also includes upgrading the nation's infrastructure and transitioning to clean energy. But the biggest moment of the night was when Biden acknowledged the scientific reality that the U.S. will transition away from fossil fuels.
I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a
because
big statement.
I would stop.
Why would you do that?
Because the oil industry pollutes significantly. Because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time.
We have
That's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
We have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
Corporate media portrayed Biden's statement as a gaffe, as opposed to noting the rising costs of Trump's denial as climate impacts accelerate. It was likely the first time that the public heard a national leader be honest about the scientific reality that we must phase out fossil fuels.
It wasn't a gaffe. He was telling the truth. Good for Joe Biden there. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as across the country, we're seeing the virus numbers go up. Forbes magazine said Donald Trump has listed the virus as an accomplishment. I guess that depends on your definition. As my son always asks, how do you define that? And I guess, how do you define accomplishment while you're claiming an accomplishment while something is getting worse? Just scary stuff. Also, thought I'd throw it out. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, yesterday instituted a nationwide mask mandate. They're getting their second spike. He's also their public health agency has ordered all bars and restaurants closed between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., shutting that stuff down. But hey, we're having 29,000 people rallies in the frigid cold of Omaha, Nebraska, and leaving them stranded. No big deal. No big. They're just people. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you. I'm shocked you didn't make the comment that, don't you think, after the Putin deal, don't you think that Donald Trump was going to follow his home base? Come on. Did I have to throw you that line?
No, I was going to leave you that. Well, I left out for you. You can follow the leader, but
thank you.
I think he's so invested in it now. I think he's feeling his oats, as my grandmother used to say, that he now feels invincible to the virus, and he's got to portray that's his way forward. He's got to portray, I beat it. I'm tough. I'm tougher than anybody, even Putin. And we're going forward without. That's an accomplishment.
Right.
Scary.
Right.
So let me get your thoughts real quick on the Omaha deal. I know Trump's taken a kind of a beating over 29,000 people being stranded out in the middle of the frigid cold after his shindig. Is that his responsibility? Is that his fault? I don't see it as it is, but I'm curious your thoughts.
You mean that it's his fault that they're stranded?
Yeah, it's his fault that the logistics team didn't bother making sure that there was a way to get those people the hell out of there.
No, I mean, people go places, things happen. I mean, you could go to a presidential rally and a huge storm could erupt, and so I mean, they freely went there. I just don't see where, where this one's his problem.
Yeah.
I mean, they went there.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset.
Right.
You brought your people there. They were dumb enough to go. They froze. Their problem.
Right.
And I know that's harsh, but I'm at some point, you just have to be realistic.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's harsh because, look, I mean, I see things in the media, mainly more on Trump because he does things, but I see them also on Biden or Harris, or they did something, or, somebody reacted in such a way, or somebody went to the rally and fell down, so, that's Joe Biden's fault because he had a rally. I mean, there comes a stopping point where it's not their problem on certain things. That's just like if people go to a rally and they don't wear masks. They should be encouraged to, obviously, but at the end of the day, it's going to be their call, and if they get sick, they made that call.
Yep, I'm all of in the world of you have the freedom to be stupid. My problem with that, and you have the freedom and the liberty to be as stupid as you want. The problem with that is that when your stupidity and your ignorance affects me, I mean, the old Justice Black thing, you have the right to flail your fists around until it touches the tip of my nose. This is the problem with you have. Go ahead, go be stupid, go and have your super spreader events, but then you're going to come around the rest of us and spread it. That's where I kind of have a problem.
Right, it's all going to be irresponsible, and they should be told to wear a mask by whoever's doing the rally, including Trump. They should be told to, but if they don't, they're going to put themselves in jeopardy. And I agree, they're going to put a lot of other people when they go home.
But it's a hoax, Bob. It's a hoax. It's all going to go away on the 4th of November.
I thought about that today. It's funny you're saying the hoax thing because you don't hear it. You don't really hear it that much, although it was
maybe
said.
You don't, but I'm hearing it a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, in ads, directly where I would have ran that ad over and over and over, period.
Yeah.
And but that's the one thing. I was just thinking this through my mind today. I watched Pence, an old tape at the CPAC conference, where he came out and repeated the 15 people, basically, don't worry about it, is what he's saying. And I was listening to that today, just going through some archives, and I thought to myself, why, they didn't know at the time, why go out and do that? To blatantly start with that type of error when it was an unknown.
No, but here's the thing. This is where I'm going to disagree with you because I think they did know. And those Woodward tapes tell us that they did know, that they knew that this was dangerous, and they knew that this was this was a real problem. In fact, there's the tape of Trump joking that someone coughed in the room or sneezed, and everybody ran for the exits. To keep repeating,
they must have not thought it was going to be that bad to make that dumb of a statement. I mean, that's my logical thought pattern. But I guess maybe. What did they think? People would ignore the statement they made? It wouldn't be recorded anywhere? I don't get it.
In fact, it was Pence saying that was in the Borat movie as well.
Right.
And it's one of those things I go, wow, because I didn't remember Pence saying that. I remember Trump saying it, but when I saw Pence saying it, I'm going, I don't remember him being that stupid on this. I remember him being fairly cautious in the words that he used. It was Trump doing the most of the dumb stuff.
Right. Yeah, you're right. That was in the Borat movie, too.
Yeah. Big news today, though. We now know who Anonymous is. We now know who the guy who wrote the book A Warning is. His name's Miles Taylor, former chief of staff at the Department of Homeland Security. He's come out in a full-throated endorsement of anybody but Trump.
He was also Senator Lee's I think chief of staff at the time, or a committee staffer, I can't remember, but he was associated with Senator Lee in a previous life. Also today, the wife of Jim Petro, Nancy Petro, he was the elected state auditor of Ohio, Republican at one point in time, longtime Republican. She's 72. She came out with a piece in the Columbus Dispatch supporting, completely against Trump.
No, we're seeing a lot. I saw Jeff Flake has his video out. A lot of this. Is it Is it just that we're seeing high-profile people who really didn't like Trump coming out, or do you think this is kind of a move by the Republicans who maybe don't like what Trump's done? Do you see this as possibly a kind of a wave thing, or is this just a handful?
No, it's a wave. I have known Nancy and Jim Petro forever. Forever. I served with Jim Petro in the state legislature. So they're people who have been, quote, good Republicans, always fair people. Petro would cross the aisle, but they were always people that were, quote, good Republicans. I don't remember them coming out in any fashion or form against Trump 4 years ago, but I think they're just a growing group. So I'd put it in the latter with your question, the latter column. I don't think this is just a flash in the pan. I think it's been out there, and then once people started coming forth, not John Kasich. I mean, John Kasich coming forth didn't start a trend, okay?
No.
Because John Kasich has some detractors.
He's got an axe to grind, too.
Yeah, he's got an axe to grind. He's got detractors. He didn't start a trend. But when you get people like Petro, Chris Gagan, I'm from Belmont County, Ohio originally. He was chair of the Republican Party in Belmont County. He's now with the Grant Project, that's campaigning against Trump. So when you start to see those people, that are all lining up together, then I think it's a trend. It's not just a flash in the pan. I think it's something that's been there, and now it's just unfolding in the final weeks here.
Yeah, I mean,
this George Conway, you can't. When I say counting, you can't count him or Kasich in the sense that they have individual ideas against Trump.
Yeah, they've got axes to grind, most certainly.
Right. That's right.
And I get that. In the Lincoln Project, there's a bunch of those guys who, seriously have problems with Trump. But there's a lot of people who, they're just, that whole the McCain line, country over party. And I saw the Flake video where he again, uttered those same words. So I got to tell you, I'm hoping that there's a lot of silent former Trump voters going, you know what, we're just going to right the ship just this once. And when they get into that voting booth, or when they mark that ballot, that their conscience takes over, and they do put country first.
Well, there's numbers that you look at. For example, when the president has decreased 24% with the senior vote, I think a lot of those seniors would be Republican. He's decreased, and that's because of, and I attribute a lot of that, Rick, to his behavior.
Yeah.
Not so much anything that the Democratic side's been able to say. He's got your Social Security in his hands. I attribute that to his behavior with seniors. So
no, absolutely, and look, because he has to his, and this is where I know a lot of my liberal friends aren't going to be thrilled. But he's one of the first presidents, and I'll be honest, who actually did the crazy stuff he said he was going to do. He's actually followed through on doing the horrible stuff that he ran on, that people said they wanted. And I keep asking the question, do you know what you want? And do you know what that looks like when you get it? Because, he has really gone after, regulations and environmental stuff. And some of the people that I've talked to in the EPA, there's some scary stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, a lot of things he has, taken the path where he said he would go. Immigration, for example, et cetera. He's done it. But I think that his behavior, he doesn't, with Anonymous, for example. I watched Anonymous on TV today with Cuomo, and, Cuomo said, you lied to us, because Anderson Cooper asked him if he was anonymous. And when he gave his answer, it was interesting, because it wasn't just a BS answer trying to get out of something. He said, look, this is the most fascinating part he said today. He said, the president, if he knew it was me, he would, go after him, make fun of him, call him names. He would sidetrack the whole issue. Presidents really never commented on the book, because they don't comment on facts. They don't debate facts. They throw in and inject into a conversation, they're goofy, she's ugly, he's sleepy. That's what he does.
No, and that's a fair argument. That one, retribution is coming. That you're going to be the target of crazy, but it's also going to detract from what you've put out. I actually agree with the person. But the question I thought of as he came forward is, I don't know if there's, any type of laws that can be used against him for leaking stuff, because at the time, when that came out, when the column came out, they were trying to clamp down in the worst way to find out who he was. And my original thought is when he came out is, in these next couple of months, while Trump is still in power, is there something that he's going to have to worry about?
Well, I mean, there could be, but with the legal system, unless he gives in with the plea deal, that can go on for a 2-year period of time.
Yeah, good point.
Now, I am sure there are plenty of attorneys who would offer pro bono service to him just to get the case.
Yeah, just to get their name on
the
it.
Justice Department, right? So he could keep that thing going a couple of years, and or long enough, and there's a change in the Justice Department, and then they, will tend to go another direction.
Yeah, I want to move to South Carolina. This quote from Lindsey Graham, just makes me. He says of Trump that they got off to a rocky start. He beat me pretty badly, but we've got something in common. I like him and he likes me. Is it that simple? I mean, are you willing to sell your soul for he likes me?
Well, look, Lindsey Graham, who I serve with in the House, and we have to look back at his history. Think what you want, not you, but plurality. Think what you want about Newt Gingrich. Lindsey Graham was one of 6 people that said, oh, things are getting a little hot in the kitchen. Newt may be going down a little bit in the polls, so we got to get rid of him. Now, prior to that, you really hope Newt didn't stop quickly in the hallway. Lindsey would have run him down. But then after that, Lindsey, went another direction and is one of the 6 people that forced Gingrich to stop being the speaker. And then you look at John McCain, was Lindsey Graham's best friend, as we know, and John McCain didn't like Trump, and Lindsey couldn't stand Trump. Look at the things he said. John McCain passes away, and look what happened.
Yeah, another
I
buddy.
mean, it's that simple. It's an opportunist deal. It's not a philosophical deal. It's an opportunist deal. And the reason when John McCain was alive, he didn't like Trump was because John McCain didn't.
Yeah, he goes the way the wind blows.
It didn't serve Lindsey's purpose. Once John McCain was not on this planet, then it served his purpose to be the guy that, made up to Trump. And from what I understand from people that know Trump, they tell me, if he makes up to, he forgets what you did to him because you're now on his side, type of thing. But what I'd ask, why isn't Trump coming to his rescue?
Right, and this is where I was going to go, because it looks like Trump's basically thrown him used him, abused him, and thrown him under the bus.
I'm pretty baffled about it.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm hoping that Lindsey loses and badly.
It's amazing. I mean, we know it's a dead heat down there, so it's quite amazing to see that. Because look, that is a seat. That's a Strom Thurmond seat. You're in there till they take you out on a stretcher.
Yeah. Evidently not, but we will see. It looks like the U.S.-China Cold War has hit the financial market as the Dow didn't do well today.
Right. It didn't do well, and also China has made a move. They've got this Ant Group. It's $34.5 billion with a fresh new stock, which did not go to New York City on our market. It went to Hong Kong and Shanghai. That's the first time this listing, which is the largest in human history, was priced not in New York City, but priced outside. Now, think about that for a second. So China is making moves. I mean, this is larger than some of the biggest banks. It's larger than J.P. Morgan Chase, and China did it elsewhere. That's kind of a signal out there. And I'm going to be very interested to see, if Joe Biden becomes president, there's a new fighting field here, supporting American upstarts and trying to do something on a competitive basis against China. I think from China's part, it's a big, brilliant move. They're saying, here we are. We're going to do what we want to do.
Yeah,
with the financial.
And what's scary to me is we're not fighting the same battles.
Right. That's what I was saying. If Biden is elected, he's going to have to look at that trend If Trump is elected, he'll look back at probably the tariffs, but eventually they would have to look at this trend too to see where we go with it.
Yeah, how do you see this playing out? I mean, because China is, like it or not, we've created the next superpower.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I liked about Trump is the fact that he went after them. I mean, they need contained. I've said that years ago. They need contained, and he went after them. Now there's a long stretch to doing this, though, and a lot of it's a painful stretch. So with Joe Biden, I think the uncertainty, people wonder how will he approach it. It's not that Biden has to, cut them off at the knees and do the whole tariff thing, but there's got to be some way, if he wants to be successful, that he has to, outthink their moves. If he doesn't, and Biden's elected in 4 years, he'll suffer some fate in Midwest areas, as I think Trump is going to.
Is China too big now? I mean, I've had people say, no, it's the genie's out of the bottle. There's no putting it back in. China is the future of this globe.
I'm a believer that we have to, stand tall ourselves. And look, you got to go after them. You got to hit them. You have to. That's the only thing they understand is force. That's the only thing they understand. But on the other end of it, we got to be smart here too and support, our American industries. Not just buy American, create American.
Right.
And we've got to do that, and not just let them ride herd. So again, we've got to come up with some ideas that are innovative, and the government's got to support some new enterprises that will actually hire American workers.
Yeah, but
I think that's what we've got to do.
No, absolutely. But isn't that? I mean, this all started because you got American business people who are going, hey, we can make a ton of money off of exploiting their labor and their environment. We're going where the cash is. Screw the U.S. Screw the American workers. Screw all that. We're going where we can make our money. And now this is where we are. Where the Chinese they don't do that.
Right. I mean, look, I watched this unfold. I was doing press conferences with Bernie Sanders, Dennis Kucinich, Lo Biondo, Republican from New Jersey, Steve Lauter from Ohio. We were doing everything we could do to fight China, and we all stood there and watched. I call it the unholy deal: Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich. Yeah. Permanent trade status, right there. The Chinese had to say, "Oh, Merry Christmas, thank you," because we gave it to them. We gave it to them.
I'm glad that you put it the way it was, because it was both of them. Sure. You can't blame it on one side or the other. It was the mainstream political thought at the time of, hey, this is what business wants, and it's what we got.
Business ran into my office. I can remember Lucent Technology saying, Bob, just think. I remember the guy from Columbus that represented them. Just think, if we sell one phone per Chinese person. And what happened? The company folded and went over there. Yeah, they sold them all right in Beijing.
No, the amazing thing you bring up Lucent Technology. I remember a guy I used to see all the time. I was running into New York, and I'd see him at the where I would take a break at, and he had the world by the short hairs, driving the big Cadillac, had a big boat. Claimed he had all this money in his 401k. He was making like over $100,000 a year working for Lucent Technologies, and then I didn't see him anymore. Lucid went from $100 a share down to $2. I saw him a couple months later, and he tells me that in order to get his severance, he had to literally box up all of his stuff, train his replacement, and they took it all back to China.
Right. And the guy that was in my office, who I had known for 15 years, begging me to vote for that, which I didn't, but begging me to vote for it, he lost his job, like within months after that. Wow. Same thing, lost it.
Something about poetic justice, huh?
No kidding.
Anyway, Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney, former congressman, political analyst. And look, China is, for me, it's as if you've been listening to this show any length of time, the issue. And like Bob said, we've got to come up with better ideas on how we keep entrepreneurial activity here. We grow business here, but that comes to the people leading them. That comes to the business roundtable. That comes to all of these CEOs who have been allowed through massive tax breaks and incredible handouts to be able to move overseas and profit. Territorial tax code like Trump rammed through in 2018. all of this stuff, this matters. Policy matters. We created this animal. We created this monster. And I don't know that policy is going to bring us back, but we've got to do something. And we got to do something smart about it. And sadly, as Bob said, Trump did hit on those notes. And I was saying at the time, I agree with him because it's the message that I was talking about. We got to do something about our trade deals. Sadly, he hath not. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you haven't voted and you have the ability to vote early, please do so. Don't drop it in the mail. Take it right to the box. Take it right to the drop-off box if you have the ability to do it. Or put the hazmat suit on and get there on Election Day. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.